Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, A Larry Party of Six. Today I'm going to be talking about all things quilting. So if you are new to quilting or would like to dip your toes in the water, this video is for you. Stick around. Among all the hobbies out there, I feel like quilting gets the reputation of being a very expensive hobby. While it is expensive to some degree, it can also be fairly cheap if you don't invest in all of the things. I started quilting a little over a year and a half ago, and I'm going to share with you my list of basic essentials to get started on quilting to save you some cash. Let's start with the basic, most essential need for quilting, and that is a machine. I have a very basic sewing machine. It is a Singer Tradition. I purchased this at Joann's when they had a massive sale, so I did not spend a ton of money on this. However, it has quilted me through a multitude of quilts, and it is still going strong. So this just is proof that you do not need to invest in a crazy fancy machine that is designed specifically for quilting. However, there are features on those machines that make their price point reasonable, but if it's not in your budget, don't go crazy. Just get something to get you started. Another basic essential that you are going to need is a cutting mat. I have just a small little 12 by 18 cutting mat here, and this, you can see, has been used and abused, but it still serves its purpose. It is a self-healing mat. I purchased this quite a few years ago and used it for other things other than quilting and fabric, but it is a great craft tool that you're going to need, especially for quilting. When it comes to cutting and piecing all of the bits and parts of your quilt, you're going to need a very handy tool, and that is the rotary cutter. This is going to be a great investment, especially when you're cutting nice straight lines. You don't want to be using a scissors for those because you usually use a ruler to cut perfectly crisp lines. Which brings me into my next tool you're going to need, and that is a ruler. Now this is where quilting can kind of get out of hand. I know many quilters who own a lifetime supply of quilt rulers in all different shapes and sizes. However, you don't really need to own all the rulers. This is my one and only rectangular ruler, and I use this about 99% of the time. This is just a 6.5 by 12.5 inch ruler. It is a Creative Grids brand ruler, and if you are going to invest in any ruler, I highly recommend this specific ruler, mainly because you can see the foggy areas in this ruler. It actually has a textured grip on the back, so when you are going to cut fabric and you lay it down to cut, it doesn't slip around on your fabric. So it is a great, great ruler to have. If you're only gonna have one ruler, make it a Creative Grids ruler with the grips. Okay, next up, you are going to need a fresh pair of scissors. Now, growing up, my mom, she loved to sew, and she had a pair of scissors that said fabric only written on the scissors. And I could never understand why, if I happened to use these for paper, she would get super upset. Listen, if you take your fabric scissors to paper, they will never cut fabric the same again. So have an exclusive pair of scissors handy just for fabric so you can cut all your fabric flawlessly. Another tool you are definitely going to need is a pile of pins. Now you can store these pins any old way. I used to have mine in just a little plastic container. They came in from the store. However, I was losing them on the floor all over the place, and I stepped on one time, so I invested in a little magnetic pin cushion. So when I'm done sewing, I can just pick it up with my pin cushion. So if you really find that needles are getting away from you, this magnetic pin cushion is definitely a great investment. However, not a necessity, but the pins, a necessity. Another tool you are going to become best friends with is the seam ripper. This is just a plain old seam ripper. I believe it came with my sewing machine, and we're great pals. I use this guy all the time because nobody's perfect, and I screw up, and this guy just gets the job done if I need something pulled out very quickly. So make sure you have a nice, sharp seam ripper. Another handy tool to have on hand is a water-soluble disappearing ink marker. There are a lot of times in patterns where you are going to be drawing straight lines on your fabric. And sometimes you can get away with using a pencil if it's on the back of a seam, but sometimes it's nice to just draw that line and know eventually it'll just go away. So get yourself a water-soluble ink pen. I use this guy all the time, and they last forever. I think I got this pen like 3 or 4 years ago, and it's still drawing. So it's not really something you would have to replace every so often when it dries out. It's endless. When it comes to your machine, there are a few accessories your machine is going to need to be able to put out a great quilt. First, you're going to need some quilting needles. These are just an 80-12 needle for basic quilting. So this will go through cotton great. You can get these at your local quilt store or even at the grocery store too. But I like getting mine from the quilt store because I can just go there, grab everything I need, and then come home and be done. Plus, if you have any questions, there's an experienced quilter running the shop who can answer all of those for you. Now, another group of accessories you're going to want for your machine are some fancy presser feet. I have 3 here. They were not overly expensive, and they were definitely worth the investment. I'll start with the biggest one here. This is called a walking foot, and it's called that because it's got the feed dogs in the top, and it'll feed at the bottom. So if you're doing all of your quilting, as in your quilt sandwich, which is the top, the batting, and the backing, all 3 layers, you're gonna want something that can sew through massively thick, chunky fabric. And this is definitely the guy that gets it done. Now the next one I have here is a stitch in the ditch tool. If I'm quilting a quilt top and I need to go in the ditch and I want it to be an invisible stitch straight in the ditch, there's a little tool that will guide my stitch right into that ditch and get a nice perfectly straight seam right in the middle. And this, if you're going to invest in any one, this is the one to definitely get. This is a 1/4 inch seam foot, and you can see there's a little guide on the side here that keeps my fabric at a perfect 1/4 inch seam distance between my needle, so I can get nice, straight, even lines and get really crisp quilt blocks. So these I got all on Amazon. These 2 were about $5, and this guy, actually I think he came from Joann's, but no more than 10 or 15. So these are definitely great tools to attach to your machine to give it quilting powers. Lastly, for your machine, you're going to need some high quality thread. And by that, I just mean get some really great thread that will last through the test of time. Because the quilts that you make are going to be held together by that thread. You're going to want to get something that will last. I have 2 different threads here. This is just a dual duty thread from Joann's. And this thread here is used to be a large spool of thread from my local quilt shop. I honestly don't know what brand it is, but it's Egyptian cotton thread. And it was about $8 for the whole spool. It was pretty large. And honestly, between the 2, it is cheaper to buy bulk thread from your local quilt store than it is to get all these small rolls from Joann's. So you're definitely going to need some great thread. But again, thread is not overly expensive. Now the last part of quilting is the ironing. Ironing is a crucial part of quilting because it's all about seam direction. When you sew a quilt block, you need to iron it nice and crisp to get your seams nice and flat to have a nice flat quilt top when you're done. So your iron is important. However, ironing doesn't have to be overly expensive. I have a simple little fabric mat for ironing, and it's great because it's portable. You can also use a folded towel, which is what I used before I had this mat. If you feel like it's worth the investment, you can try out a wool mat, which a lot of quilters swear by. But again, wool mats are a higher price point. So if you are on a tight budget, I would recommend just getting something simple like a portable table ironing mat or a folded towel. When it comes to your iron, you do not have to spend a fortune. I just have a Rowenta iron here. Before this, I had a Shark steam iron from Walmart, and I don't really get crazy in my ironing budget. I keep it pretty low key. The only thing that you're gonna need your iron to do is be heavy, shoot steam, and press. You do not want an iron with gunky stuff because that will just junk up your cotton fabric. So make sure you have a nice clean iron, and that is really all you need. Once you've gathered all of these, you are ready to charge full steam ahead on your first quilting project. So I hope you've seen that quilting does not have to cost an arm and a leg. It is a hobby that's accessible to anyone in any income bracket. So I hope after today you don't let the price point of quilting deter you from trying it out. I encourage all of you guys to get out there, pick up a machine, and jump on the bandwagon. Hey guys, thanks for watching my video. I hope you learned a little bit about quilting basics and all the tools you're gonna need to get started. If you liked my video, go ahead and click subscribe so you can stay up to date on all of my current videos that I put out. And I will see you guys all next time. Bye!